Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Laying It Out. I'm your host, Scotti Dempsey, for Chelsea Pockets, who could not join us for this recording session today, but she will be here in the subs only, so don't miss her too much. Today, we have a super fun interview where me and Mike Ball sit down and talk about all things D3, what with D3 Nationals coming up this weekend, 3 days for 3 divisions, and we talk about all the sorts of fun things that we saw at college nationals when we were together last year, and then some of the fun games that we're looking forward to seeing this year, some hot takes, talk about the upsets, players that we're excited to see, players we've had our eyes on, all sorts of good, like 7,500 Club type content, because I'm sure you guys, as friends of the pod, as listeners, know that this podcast loves D3 Ultimate. It's really where the heart of, I think where the heart of Ultimate is, and also where all of us got our start, including Mike Ball. So with that, I don't really want to take too much time before we sit down to have our interview with Mike. It's a super great interview, like I said. So looking forward to that. And then also for our subs only, make sure that you head over there to check it out. It's basically just a bonus episode at this point. It's going to be a 2-parter. We do a bracket that Pockets put lots of effort in, and Mike and I get to rate our favorite D3 women's jerseys, because if there's anything we love more than D3 Ultimate, it's D3 women's. Am I right? So make sure you head over to the PS Zone once you finish listening to our episode with Mike. And that's all I got for our little intro. Welcome back to another week of Laying It Out. Catch you at the interview. Okay, welcome back. I'm joined here today with Mike Ball, the head D3 editor for Ultiworld and friend of the pod. Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem, Scotty. How's it going?
Pretty good. Excited for D3 Nationals this coming weekend. We're going to have a little chat about all things D3, as this pod is wont to do. Tell us about yourself and your experience with Ultimate, Mike. Let us get to know you a little better.
Yeah, sure. So I, as one might believe, have my roots in D3. So I started playing Ultimate in college, went to a small school in North Carolina called High Point University, and actually played there from 2011 to 2017. So I did 6 years before it was cool to do 6 years, because our team wasn't a real sanctioned team until 2015. And so my eligibility clock didn't start until 2015. So went to grad school there and was able to play for 2 years after that. So helped start the team there and everything. And then let's see, club stuff. I've played for like a handful of different club teams. I've bounced around. I currently play for a mixed team out of Raleigh called Malice in Wonderland. That is actually the name. I'm not messing with you.
I love that.
And I've played in the past. I played a couple years on the Raleigh Flyers. I guess now the Carolina Flyers, and I now am an assistant coach for the Raleigh Radiants. So on top of all of the Ultiworld stuff that I do, I coach, I play, I captain, I kind of do a little bit of everything that Ultimate has to offer.
Yes, we were just discussing before we recorded about how Ultimate is carried on the backs of people who are stretching themselves too thin, and it's like, you really gotta love it to get involved the way that we do, and then you can't only do one thing, you gotta do it all.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, the sport, like with the phase that we're at right now, like you see the same names pop up in a lot of different functions. And so I'm one of those suckers who pops up in a lot of those different functions. So, yep.
Well, glad to have you on. Finally, we're overdue to have you on the pod. So, as far as for our listeners, when I went to D3 Nationals this past fall, unfortunately, I will not be there this spring because I am moving, and that is its own set of drama when you're living in New York City and you have to travel, 20 blocks, but it takes forever with all your things. So we wanted to bring Mike on, talk about how we met, how fun D3 Nationals was in the fall, some maybe hot takes or wild speculation about how we think Nationals is going to go this spring, and maybe some, hopeful upward trajectory of D3, because I am of the camp that D3 Ultimate is really the heart of the sport. Like, it's really, you play D3 Ultimate because you want to play Ultimate, you don't play it to be good.
Yeah, maybe I think heart of the sport is a little generous, but it is like the most raw, uncut, unfiltered version of the sport, I would say. It's like a lot of when you hear old heads talk about what Ultimate used to be is what D3 still is. It's smaller rosters, so top players are playing a little bit more. There's not observers most of the time, so it's still very much self-officiated with no observers tainting the experience or anything, whatever your take on observers might be. It is still one of the untouched, pure forms of the sport that's still being played. Half the teams don't have coaches. It's some over the top captain, yelling at people to do things. It is it is what Ultimate used to be before it got all legitimate and everything. That's what D3 still is.
Oh, I know. I always tell people this and they always cringe now that I play club and I'm, meeting people from across the country. I did not know what an O or a D line was until my junior year of college after I played club my first season, because we had an 18 girl roster and half of it was freshmen. So it was 4 veterans, 3 freshmen in some rotation. D line doesn't really have to do much because half of the turns are just because people don't know how to catch.
Yeah, it's I tweeted this recently. Someone was talking about club tryouts, and my first club tryout interest form, it asked for do you prefer O line or D line? And I responded, I was I play until my legs stop working, and then I play another couple points after that. I don't know what this privilege of O and D line is. It's if you're able-bodied, get your ass out there.
Literally. So enough, joking about our own experiences, although I'm sure any other D3 player can relate to whatever degree. Spring Nationals, I felt was that was one of the best weekends I've had in a while. It was so fun. So I'm bummed I'm not going to be there this fall, but or this spring. I'm mixing up my words. But how did you think about 4 days of college nationals, and any takeaways that maybe we haven't debriefed yet?
So before we dive too far into that, I feel I need to address Pockets dodging me by not being on the pod today. Pockets felt all kinds of comfortable coming on and talking about me recruiting her and her partner to come play on my mixed team, and talking about the sanctity of our bar experience at Fall Nationals, and then dodges me on the podcast. I'm a little bit offended, but no, Fall Nationals was great. I mean, it was a super unique experience to have it mixed with D1 and kind of have the one big event type feel. And while I do feel having that one big event, maybe robbed D3 of some of the spotlight of having its own weekend and everything, it did kind of attract some bigger crowds and a little bit of bleed over from the D1 tournament and stuff like that. So I think as far as and there are other factors at play here too, where first nationals event in almost 2 years. And, I think some people very much thirsting for that experience again, but it was one of the more highly attended, crowd, energy experiences that I've seen from D3 nationals. And so it was really cool to kind of have that experience and have that. And, it makes me excited. I'm sure we'll talk about this, but we have a 3-day event for the first time this year. And so it makes me excited to see if having nationals be stretched out a little bit more helps lead to more consistency with crowds like that.
Yeah, I was a really big fan of the combined event. Obviously, I've only attended D3 Nationals as a player, and then this was my first time as a reporter. I felt there was a lot to gain from just bringing the whole community together as a whole, rather than D1 being so separate, because I do feel D1 gets like, I mean, they do. They get so much more attention regardless. Like, they were the ones on the ESPN stream. But, like, the D3 teams, like, were also there, you know? It was like a proximity thing. They were in it just as much as the D1 teams. I really didn't feel like D3 was overshadowed too much. Obviously, like, different platforms on which things were streamed, but everyone played finals on the same field, and there weren't as many D3 games live streamed, but I think that there was just a lot to be gained as like the community as a whole.
Yeah, so you mentioned that like there weren't as many D3 games live streamed, so we weren't able to live stream pool play games. Like all of pool play games that were streamed were D1.
Yeah.
But having the additional like Ultiworld resources that were able to be there from having both events there meant that there were 2 live stream fields. So we had every semifinal streamed because we had 2 stream fields as opposed to where we normally just have 1 stream field. So in the past, while like, yes, we've been able to stream pool play, we also were able to stream more of the bracket. So it actually kind of like netted out to be equal, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there, especially with having more Ultiworld resources. That was nice as far as like being able to watch and cover as many games as possible and all that good stuff that comes with covering a nationals event.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I was just going to say, but you know, I think that one of the other cool things that we got to see was I think that there's like and this is where I start to like go to bat for the division a little bit, is that especially at the top levels of the division, the level of play is not drastically different from that of D1. Like the top D3 teams could compete with most D1 teams. And so I think another cool thing was having those games like on fields like next to each other. There were times where you could see the level of play, especially once you got later into the bracket of D3, looked a lot like what we were seeing all weekend from the D1 team. So it was like having them side by side like that kind of provided a pretty like clear cut comparison of like where the 2 divisions stack up against each other.
Yeah, I wholeheartly agree, especially like Middlebury and Portland, because, you know, I'm very partial to the women's side of D3. But they really, I think they could have hung with any of the D1 nationals teams. Like they were pretty kick-ass the whole weekend, and it was pretty great to see.
Yeah, no doubt. I appreciated you coming out there as like a reporter for the first time and like taking that step. It's always something that we're always looking for, is like new reporters and people to like make that leap. I remember you talking about how cool of an experience it was for you on your pod afterwards, but like talk about that again, because I'm getting ready to go into this weekend with another like fairly like new team of reporters. And so I'm like curious to like hear what made it so cool to you, so I can maybe like help get this new group of reporters excited for this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was the whole fact that the D3 or just the whole nationals experience did feel like a reunion for like the ultimate community as a whole. And that's what I talked about a lot. Really hopeful that I can come to like next year's nationals once I have my life sorted out a little bit more. I'm still like, 24 and trying to figure out this finance job. But here we are. As far as what made the experience so great, I mean, I felt like you and Zach and Mags, our editor, like everyone was very welcoming and equally as excited to be there. I felt like we worked really well together as a team and like we communicated really effectively. I think that we all, including Olivia and Eddie, who were in our car with us back and forth so much, I think that we all just like had so much fun. Like, we're all just ultimate nerds. So it was so fun to like watch so much ultimate and then talk about it and debrief it. And I don't really know if like, I don't think you guys did anything special, that like you wouldn't do for anyone else. I think that like everyone's personalities just worked out really well. And it was just like such a high quality group of people that it was like, this like fever dream of a weekend was so exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I guess I don't really know what the general perception is of like doing reporting for Ultiworld, and like we don't need to just turn this into like an advertisement for Ultiworld or anything. I'm not trying to do that, but like one of the things that I think people maybe overthink is like the nature of the job. It's like if you love Ultimate, all you're doing is talking about Ultimate just for everybody else to read and hear. Like that all you're doing is like the same conversations you might have with your teammates after a tournament or like, you know, between rounds or like hell, sometimes even during a round. Like those same conversations, all you're doing is putting them on wax for other people to read. And like you don't have to be some like savant of the sport or some like next level analyst. Like there's analysis type writing that you can do, but like for just general reporting, all you're doing is watching Frisbee and then telling other people what you saw. And so like it's a fun thing to do, to then also like feel like you are like kind of bridging the gap between like the people at home and the people at the fields and like serving as their eyes and ears at the event. It's a cool experience. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely hopeful I can come back to it once, like I said, once I get more of my life in order. So hopefully this is not the last we've seen of Scotti Dempsey, the reporter, because I really feel like I gained a lot, especially for my writing skills. And I've been like complimented on it at work too. Everyone's like, you're a really good writer. And I'm like, do you know why? It's because I write about Frisbee in my free time.
Yeah, all those reps writing about Ultimate.
Yes,
that's what'll do it.
Exactly. So, so going into this weekend, D3 Nationals, 3 days, 16 teams, a lot of the same players that we saw before, some upsets. Barry beat Union to take the Southeast region bid, which is kind of crazy and unexpected. Yeah. But what teams are you looking forward to seeing play? And who do you think could be a surprise upset? Or do you think there's like a pretty solid set of teams that are going to be high performers?
Yeah, so let's talk about the women's division first.
All right.
I think kind of going pool by pool. So you mentioned Barry already. First time nationals team on the women's side. Their men's team has become kind of a perennial attendee at nationals, but the women's team making nationals for the first time. There's always something special about the first time nationals attendees. And I think that you see it a lot more at the D3 level where there's maybe less like programs and more so like attrition and turnover in the teams that you see. But like those first time teams, it's always such a cool and special experience for those teams. In Pool B, so I think the team I'm maybe most excited about here is Skidmore. So they come in as the 11 seed.
Right.
But they come in as the 11 seed ahead of SUNY Geneseo from the Metro East. And that's on the back of a massive upset at regionals where Skidmore put the work on SUNY Geneseo. It was like a 14-7 win, an absolute blowout. And it was one of those things that like, it wasn't even like on our radar necessarily, and then blew us like out of the water. And so they come in as an 11 seed, and like one of the things that I always like as a reporter who doesn't get to like travel around to a ton of events, doesn't get to see a ton of teams on film, like has to kind of like do some score reporter watching for a lot of teams. Yeah. Is like the teams that don't just win, but like win handily and take care of business. And like that kind of a dominant win kind of puts them on my radar a little bit as like a team that can maybe like rock the boat a little bit at nationals. Yeah. Let's see, like, yeah.
Well, I was going to say that's the fun thing about D3 Nationals is that there's so much room to rock the boat. Like I'm just pulling up the pools now. Occidental really rocked the boat this fall. So I'm kind of excited to see what they do. They do this year. It's funny that they're the 13th seed since they finished 5th. I don't know how many players they had either graduate or like be returners for COVID, but I'm excited to see that one. I was going to say the same thing with the first time nationals teams. I guess I got to give my shout out to Brandeis because my boyfriend's a Brandeis alum, and they really ran through the bracket pretty effectively for first-time nationals team as well. They're coming from a tough division. I'm seeing Middlebury, Wellesley, and Mount Holyoke took the bids for New England, which is those are some new names for this season as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, New England is always kind of a nightmare, right? Like it's always, a toss-up of who comes out of that region. I think they always have, like, in our top 25, like our Ultiworld top 25, they always have like 4 to 6 teams in there and never enough bids.
Yeah.
So it's always an adventure from that region. Let's see. So Pool C. So this is like maybe some low-hanging fruit a little bit, but I am interested to see Portland. So Portland is the Pool 1 seed, and deservedly so. They've like dominated everybody that they've played this season and like been comfortable in getting back there. And they were finalists in the fall at Fall Nationals.
Yeah.
But we also saw Kim Dorr do a lot of work for them in the fall.
A lot of work.
And and with Kim not being there this spring, I'm just interested to see how different they look and like what their breakdown looks like. They returned Jacqueline Wadayoka, who is just an absolute beast, but I'm curious to see how they replace the production that Kim Dorr gave them in the fall.
Yeah, I know talking to their coaches, in all those sideline interviews, they were just really proud of how much the younger players stepped up. So I'm really hopeful to see like those younger players continue to have improved, because now they have like the space to like step into that big hole that Kim left. So that is definitely one that I'm interested in seeing too, because Jacqueline is pretty unstoppable, but she can't be a one-man team.
Mm-hmm. And they have a small roster. I think I just counted, it's like 16 players on the roster. So it's one of those things where they're going to get contributions from up and down the entire group.
Yeah.
The last team I kind of wanted to circle, and I'm just putting the ball on the tee for you here to knock it out of the park, is Lehigh. So Lehigh come in as the 5 seed, and they are another one of those teams that where I talk about with Score Reporter watching the teams that are dominant on their way to nationals. So they avenged a loss to Haverford at sectionals. They lost to Haverford 10-8, turned around and beat them 15-8 at regionals. And like they played 3 games at regionals and won those games 15-6, 14-4, 15-8. So you talk about a team that's peaking at the right time. Like they are on the ascent and like coming into nationals on a really high note. And like I am very excited to see like what they look like. I got to watch a little bit of them in the fall, and I'm hoping to get to watch more of them this spring. But Anna Savinsky was like one of my favorite players to watch at Fall Nationals. And so like I'm looking forward to seeing what she and the rest of the roster can do. But they look like a team that are peaking at the right time, and like being in that Pool D, kind of that pool of death is a little bit tough, but they seem like they're peaking at the right time to be up for that challenge.
I think so too. I mean, I've had like the whole Lehigh senior squad in my ear this whole spring season, because they got second at their first tournament to Haverford. They lost on U Point, but I mean, I know Vineland well as having like played there with Lehigh for so many years, and if the winds go in the wrong direction, you lose the game on the flip. And they made sure to tell me that 1 point differential was due to the flip. So I think that they've been working really hard. Obviously, we know and love Coach Matt Lubitz. I think she's his fiance now. She's also helping coach them. So they've got like a lot of really good perspectives. I'm still in the group me. So I'm really excited to see how they do. I think that they got a little rattled last year at nationals in the fall. Just like I think that other teams came out really strong because they were used to being really dominant. So now they've like actually had to face some competition and overcome some adversity. So excited to see how they handle Wellesley, because I know Wellesley's actually had a really dominant season as well. And also I'll just shout out Anna Savinsky again. Her Frisbee nickname's Kiwi. And she's always been a beast since freshman year, because she was one of like my babies when I was like an upperclassman. So I'm so excited to see that she's really like carrying the torch for this team.
Yeah. Now, all of that said, and like these are all like teams that we're very excited to watch. Like, we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the fact that it's very much Middlebury's title to
Yeah.
lose. I mean, they were awesome in the fall and played some high quality ultimate, like really, really good frisbee, and return everybody from that fall roster. So, I mean, Claire Babbitt Bryan is one of the best players in women's college ultimate, regardless of division. She would start on any team in any D1, D3. She is fantastic. Keisha Wilde, she is like really, really good, really unique as a handler, tall handler. So it's a matchup nightmare whether you want to put like a quicker handler defender on her, or someone to match her size, like on the mark. Like, just a nightmare matchup. And then, Cameron Umack, one of my favorite defenders that I watch, they put her in this wing position in their zone, and she just gobbles up blocks on anything that floats. And so, they did split a season series with Carleton Eclipse, so Eclipse has shown the ability to beat them, but I have to imagine it's still perceived as Middlebury's title to lose.
I'm with you. I think that like they definitely have kept a train rolling. I know that they like didn't win their first tournament, but that's because I heard through the grapevine they played open lines, which means that like I don't know exactly how big their roster is, but that means they've got freaking depth for days. Again, you named that deadly trifecta of players that they have on their roster. So I'm equally as excited to see them play. I'm definitely going to be watching the live streams because, I mean, they've been in a class of their own this whole season.
Yeah. I mean, they play. They play. They're not just like, they don't just out talent people. They play really attractive ultimate and play really smart, like good quality team frisbee. So I would definitely encourage people to tune in and check them out. And you never know though. All it takes is one game. Maybe you talked about weather. We're ultimate or nationals is in Milwaukee, so we randomly we get a Midwest wind, and who knows. So, but it is very much like they are the heavy favorites to win.
Yeah, I'm excited. We can switch gears over to your expertise, the men's side. Who do we have coming in as the 1 seed? St. Olaf.
So I think, and this is a contentious one. I think it's St. Olaf.
Oof.
I think it's pronounced Olaf. It makes no sense based on how it looks. But I think we got corrected on that a couple years ago at Nationals. I think it is Olaf. So yeah, but a little bit of a surprise with the 1 seed this weekend, St. Olaf. So Olaf lost in the semifinals of Fall Nationals on double game point to Middlebury. So it's not like they kind of came flying out of nowhere and were off the radar exactly. But they were able to get the 1 seed at Nationals this year off the back of a head-to-head win against Middlebury. They met at I-85 Rodeo, which was a tournament in Axton, Virginia. Very random for just these awesome D3 teams to be going to this tournament. But they met in the final. They met in the final of that tournament and eked out a 13-12 win over Middlebury. I actually got to go to that game. I live an hour and a half from Axton, Virginia, and so I drove out and filmed it. The game's in the Ultiworld video archive for anybody interested. But they are trying to figure out how to frame this in the way that's impossible to be offended by. There's that old stereotype of corn-fed Midwesterners, just big, healthy, athletic, people from the Midwest. That is what St. Olaf is. And that's not to detract from their skill in any way, because they are very refined, very skilled ultimate players still. But they are one of the biggest teams across the roster that you will ever see. They just have size up and down the roster. And they play well with that size and use that size well. They've got several players who are also just super talented. I mean, Ben Fetlin Souza is their center handler. I love watching him play. He's just your classic, steady center handler. They have a couple of super athletic cutters in Will Brandt and Luke Bleers that they both play for the Minnesota Windchill. They play for Minneapolis Sub-Zero. They are top line excellent Ultimate players. And then just up and down their whole roster, just a ton of like really athletic depth that like buy into their system. They're a well-coached team. They've got a good coaching staff. Caleb Zidlow, I think is how you say your name. Sorry, Caleb. I've always just called you Caleb. Aiden Clements and Dave Truesdale. I mean, they do a great job. However, that being said, one of the reasons that has to be highlighted for that win against Middlebury in the final at Rodeo, Middlebury was playing without one of their best players, Walker Frankenberg. Walker was
he's a beast.
Our offensive, he was our offensive player of the year in the fall, and like led D3 Nationals and like touches and throwing yards. It was just really incredible to watch. And he dislocated his shoulder on a bid on Saturday of that tournament. So Middlebury made it all the way to the final and lost on double game point without him, which like just speaks to the absurd depth on the rest of their roster. And they lost by a couple in the fall to Oklahoma Christian, who I'm sure we're going to talk about in a second. And like Middlebury's women's team, Middlebury brings back everybody from the fall. They didn't have any grad players playing for them in the fall. And so they come in as the 2 seed, but likely as favorites to potentially make it to the final, or as we can talk about here in a minute, to at least play Oklahoma Christian. I think those are probably the 2 betting favorites for.
Yeah. I was on the sideline live tweeting that whole Middlebury St. Olaf game. And first of all, their roster is so freaking tall. I was up to like these dudes' elbows being like, can you tell me who threw that pass? I did not see that. And you're very tall. All of them across the board. That was one of the best games of Ultimate I've ever watched, because it was freaking clean and it was like so energetic and spirited. And I really think that, like, again, Middlebury's men's and women's team, first of all, I think it's super cool how they have like a non-gendered name that they both share. So that's pretty sick. They're both the pranksters. Mm-hmm. And they play the same way. They all interact the same way. It's all a big freaking party. And I was kind of on the sideline like, damn, kind of wish I went to Middlebury. Like, playing Frisbee would have been a party. It would have been serious Frisbee. Would have been having a lot of fun doing it. So, feeling a little FOMO there, because they're so awesome. And I guess Oklahoma Christian, because they were on the other side playing the semifinal against Richmond, which was a real heartbreaker for your Richmond boys. I know a lot of them tweet at you all the time. One of them went to high school with a girl I played college Ultimate with, so it's like I'm a little connected to them as well. But Oklahoma Christian, they're not returning Kyle Hankey, who was a major player, but they do have some new faces, right?
Yeah, so Oklahoma Christian is kind of, I mean, they're the talk of the division for obvious reasons in terms of their scholarship program. And that's something that, we can maybe come back to if you want at some point. But they are going to be, they've kind of, for lack of a better way of putting this, have really messed up this tournament, because they came out at regionals and came out flat and lost their first game of regionals, only their second loss to a D3 team in program history. Not in program history, this year, counting the fall season. And lost 15-9 to Missouri S&T, just a decisive loss. And the way the format worked at that tournament meant that the best they could finish after that loss is second in the region. And there's a rule when seeding teams at nationals that teams have to be seeded in regional finish. So Colorado College, who won the region, has to be seeded above Oklahoma Christian. Now, Colorado College has had a great season, but there is no argument to be made to have Colorado College seeded any higher than fourth. And there's another rule for D3 national seeding where they avoid regional rematches in pool play. So with Colorado College being fourth, Oklahoma Christian could not be fifth. And so then the highest they could be is the seed that they are now, which is sixth. So Oklahoma Christian, the defending champions, who have wiped the floor with any D3 team they have played in most of their games as a program, come into the weekend as the 6th seed And that messes things up in a bunch of different ways. One, it punishes Barry, the 1 seed in their pool, who has had a fantastic season and shouldn't have to be punished by having effectively a semifinals opponent in their pool. So the winner of that Barry Oklahoma Christian game then gets put into the bracket in the 3 spot, which means their semifinal would be against the 2, which is Middlebury. So we could see, if Oklahoma Christian beats Barry in pool play, we could see the Middlebury Oklahoma Christian rematch that would have been the heavy favorite for a championship game rematch. Instead, we might be seeing that as a semifinal because of the way that the seeding has broken out.
Interesting. I hope it's streamed. Or at least, that semifinal, because, we're trying not to be biased here, but it was kind of easy to create a villain out of Oklahoma Christian with, Kyle Hankey showing up and just absolutely tooling on the rest of D3 because he's an elite level player and just wanting to see the underdogs Middlebury win. I
will not go there with you. I do not think that they are villains. I think that I can see why some people view them that way, but I don't think that they are villains. I think that what they are doing is where the sport could end up one day for everybody. And when you are the first team to do something, you are inevitably going to face blowback from it. And I think that it's an unfair advantage right now because they are the only ones that are doing it. But I think that they should not be frowned upon or vilified for being the first ones to do it. I think that what we should be hoping is that we get to a point where everybody is doing that. And it stinks right now that not everybody has that. And you could make the fair case that D3, a division that was created to balance the playing field for smaller schools, hosting the team that has an inherent competitive advantage with their scholarship program. You could make that argument that they shouldn't be in D3 because of that. I'm not sure where I fall on that argument, but you could make both sides of it pretty easily. But I don't think that just because they can recruit and bring in scholarship players, I don't think that should inherently make them.
Yeah, I feel like villain was the wrong word there, but it was still fun to be okay, emotionally invested in the outcome of of that finals game. So I'm interested to see how this pool shakes out for Barry and Oklahoma Christian, because regardless, it will be a good game. I hope.
Yeah, so I guess I can break a little news on the pod here that maybe my overlords won't be thrilled.
This comes out on Thursday.
Whatever, that's fine. It'll probably be public information. Oh yeah, and we're recording on Monday, so it might be public info by this time anyways. So we are not streaming pool play. We are filming 2 pool play games per round, one in the men's division, one in the women's division. And the goal is to try and have those games edited and uploaded on Saturday. So by end of day Saturday, having those games uploaded so that hopefully people can then watch them before the bracket on Sunday. There's a lot of variables in that in terms of upload speeds, Wi-Fi connections, everything, but that is going to be the goal. And then we will be streaming for sure starting in quarterfinals, and maybe pre-quarters. Not sure if we're going to stream pre-quarters or not, but we will for sure be streaming starting in quarterfinals. We will stream 2 quarterfinals games and 2 semifinals games, and then we will stream both finals. So we will have streams going for 4 rounds on Sunday and then the 2 finals on Monday. So, and I can go ahead and tell you that the Barry Oklahoma Christian game in pool play is one that I am adamantly insisting we film. So we'll be filming 8 games on Saturday, streaming 4 games on Sunday, and streaming 2 more games on Monday. So doing our best to get as much content as possible from the weekend.
Then that's also, cue to our listeners to make sure that you check out the content or tune into the live streams, because looking forward to some good Ultimate. I mean, we love college D3 Ultimate, and it's especially at the level that these teams like really, once we get to the higher end of the bracket, are like it's good Ultimate, as much as we were ragging on D3 at the beginning.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good Ultimate, especially once we get to where we're gonna be live streaming, and also just like across the weekend. I don't want those like early comments about like some of the nature of the sport of the division rather to take away from like the quality that comes from it, because like I will like to get to use this as like a soapbox for a second. Like, one of the reasons that I got into reporting D3 was because when I was playing in D3, I played against so many fucking incredible players that were just like among the best Ultimate players that you would see. Like when I was playing in college, I was playing against Henry Babcock, who now plays for Dig, and I was playing against Zach Norbaum, who now plays for DC Breeze and has played for Space Heater and playing for Truck Stop. And like I was playing against these kids that were like phenomenal Frisbee players. And then I think it was Henry who posted his team nominated him for the Callahan, and like it got shared and everything posted on, Reddit, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. And like everybody just immediately kind of like brushed it aside because it was D3, and they were like, yeah, so what? He's doing all this against like D3 teams or blah, blah, blah. And just because he played D3 was like immediately dismissive of it. And like I saw that and I was like, you people are insane. Like, this guy is incredible. And like, he deserves to be able to have like a spotlight and have like credit given to him without the asterisk of he's D3 being thrown on it. And so like the only way to do that was to kind of like up our D3 coverage. And so like worked with Ultiworld to like kind of help try and build out some more D3 coverage and like expand what they were already doing. And then like we created the Donovan Award so that like D3 players could have an award that they were contending for without having the like, shadow over their head of competing against the D1 players. And like all of it is to like recognize and like elevate the fact that like this division has a ton of amazing players and teams that don't deserve to like be compared to D1. I think that the phrase, I forget who it's like originally attributed to, but like comparison is the thief of joy kind of applies here, where it's like constantly being compared to other teams from other divisions, like kind of robs these players and teams of the spotlight that they deserve. And, I think that people need to just give the division a shot and give these players a shot. If you haven't watched already, I'm sure a lot of your audience like has watched already, but if you haven't, like tune in this weekend and like check it out. You might find a new favorite player that you'll see on the club scene at some point, or like, find a new team whose like attitude and spirit you really jive with. Like give it a shot, because there's tons of incredible talent and people and teams in this division, just like any other. So.
That was so well said. I was going to agree and tack onto it, but I think you were pretty all encompassing. I mean, I have just as many talented D3 players that I either played against or watched play at nationals the years we didn't qualify that, and then I was at a gridlock game last weekend and I got to see like Tulsa Douglas and Abby Chang like run their respective offensive and defensive lines. And,
yes.
Yeah, D3 really, like I said, I believe it's like part of the heart of Ultimate is like you got to at least make it accessible for like everyone to be able to try it, because you never know who's going to show up and be like the next big thing.
For sure. Absolutely. And like, just because like where someone chose to go to school and get their degree and get their education shouldn't dictate whether or not they are seen as a player. And we need to be able to see and talk about everybody regardless of, of where their life has taken them for school. So.
Great. Yeah. Well, I think we've covered everything that we were wanting to discuss. Thanks so much for joining us. Or I guess specifically me, since Pockets couldn't make it. Mike, is there anything
since Pockets ducked me? Pockets is ducking me.
Exactly. So is there anything you'd like to shout out? How can people contact you? Anything you want to plug while you have the platform?
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter at Mike underscore ball 423. You can sift through my NBA and NFL and soccer musings to find my occasional opinions on Frisbee. But it is a package deal. I don't have like a Frisbee specific account. Sorry about it. But really just like support our coverage of D3 as much as you can. Like subscribe to Ultiworld, respond to articles and tweets about the division. You know, give views and clicks to stuff and everything to show a desire for this coverage because we work really hard and we do what we can with the resources and such that we have. And um, I know there's a million different things in Ultimate that deserve people's support and attention, but any amount of it that you can give to D3 is only going to help what we do. So, and keep listening to Laying It Out because having podcasts and people that are talking about Frisbee from different perspectives is important. And Scotti and Pockets do a great job on here, and everybody should continue to support this podcast.
Thanks so much, Mike. Means a lot. With that, I think we're going to actually end the episode here. So you get to join me for our little outro. We will be in the PS zone. Haven't decided what we'll be discussing yet, but potentially bringing Mike back to do a jersey bracket to discuss what D3 jerseys we like and dislike. Maybe a little inebriated. Who's to say? But with that, I've been Scotti Dempsey, filling in for Chelsea Pockets, and with our guest, Mike Ball. So with that, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the flip.
That day all the Sneetches forgot about stars and whether they had one or not upon theirs.